Hello, friends. Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable on this fine Wednesday, joined by Bo Brack live at the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. And Bo, a lot to talk about, right? We're picking ourselves up. Very inactive trade deadline for the Arizona Cardinals. We covered that yesterday on our audio-only podcast. We move forward. Seahawks coming to Arizona this weekend. And my question to you, good sir, is this a must-win game if you're Kliff Kingsbury?
Yeah, I mean, the margin for error is gone, right? I mean, this team needs a dub, and they need it this week. And the big opportunity is you've got an overachieving 5-3 Seattle Seahawks team. They've won 3 in a row. They're playing a really good brand of football in a rebuild year. Like, all the momentum is going the Seattle Seahawks way. What the Arizona Cardinals have an opportunity to do is absolutely just throw a stick in that spokes as far as their bike that they're riding down the street and just completely trip them up. Now, they're going to have to do that by playing the offensive football that they've played the last 2 weeks since DeAndre Hopkins come back, and then some, maybe mistake-free football. But, you know, the Arizona Cardinals, you can say the word of the week is opportunity. You can say it till we're blue in the face, but it comes down to, can they actually get the dub when they need it? Because they have zero wiggle room as far as the 2022 season goes going forward.
Well, especially you can't start this season 0-3 in the division, be swept by the Seahawks, and be taken seriously as a true contender. I don't care how many close losses you have. I don't care that the game was there to be won last week in Minnesota. This week, you're at home. You have the $45 million quarterback. Your team is not supposed to be rebuilding. That's Seattle's MO. They have multiple first-round picks in next year's draft because they traded Russell Wilson. They're playing a bunch of rookies. Even people who, are proud of what the Seahawks are doing this year, even people in Seattle understand, like, yeah, we probably won't make the playoffs. This is a nice story. For the Cardinals, that sense of urgency has to be there. And on Seattle's front, they're playing loose because of it. And I feel like Kliff Kingsbury opens games, and you can just sense this team is so tight. They're so tight to score and produce early. And Brian, I agree with you. It is a must-win. It is a must-win for Kliff Kingsbury, because I don't know how you look your fan base in the eye, your locker room, the 53-man, if you lose to the Seahawk team. Because, again, I want to preface this again by saying that I think the Seahawk team is feisty and they're competitive, but they haven't really beaten anybody. They beat the fraudulent Giants last week. They've beaten the Lions, but they got crushed by San Francisco. Real teams in the NFC that we think are going to be good, they've lost to. If the Cardinals want to be taken seriously for the remainder of 2022 and make some noise and try to put a run together, you have to win this game. 100% Kliff Kingsbury at home, you got to win.
This game is the defibrillator, right? I mean, this is the one that can shock you back to life. I mean, you're on the table right now, and you need somebody to shock this team back to life. I think DeAndre Hopkins has given it a boost, right? Given it a pulse, a very faint pulse. It was a lot higher after the Saints went on Thursday Night Football, and then you kind of lost it again after a brutal loss to the Vikings, where you shot yourself in the foot over and over and over again. So the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, it's right there for them. As according to our friends over the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the Vegas believes, the wise guys believe in this Arizona Cardinals team, where we really haven't seen that all season long, but they're seeing this offense trend in the right direction. But we know that this team does an incredibly good job in getting in their own goddamn way. And that's the most frustrating part about this. I mean, it's like everything that you want is at the end of a Seahawks win. That's all you have to do is go out and get it. It's roster. It's roster moves you didn't make. It's roster moves that you've made since the trade deadline. It's guys who are available, who are unavailable, and it's just play on the field. I mean, it's not just one thing that's costing this team its ability to win each and every week. It's just an unbelievable, just different amount of variables that come your way. It just has put this Cardinals fan base, its frustration at a boiling point.
And that is echoed in the chat. Chat's raining hot fire today. I want to get to some of these comments. Nightingale Sunset, Geno Smith beating Kyler twice would just be killer. It would be. We make fun of Geno Smith all the offseason. It's not even the fans. The national media will be circling like vultures. That's absolutely correct. The narrative's out on Kyler Murray, and he puts in a good point that the video game memes will be insufferable. I like this comment earlier from John Dune, because this is how I feel. Bo and I, you know Kliff better than I do, but we both interacted with him. Kliff, according to John Dune, seems like a great dude, and he is very nice, very respectful. But as far as his coaching, what he's accomplished, he should hold his head up. Unfortunately, he's not the guy players would run through a wall for. We need experience. And that is what, John, we echoed throughout the course of the offseason. Yeah. Why did Michael Bidwill feel like this extension was necessary? Even if Kliff Kingsbury, I'm jumping ahead to January, is let go, he is not a bust of a head coach. He got this team to the playoffs. They were in, disarray. They were picking first overall, and he made them viable. And he talked them in, or convinced them at least, to take a look at Kyler Murray, right? And so it's not like they hired Adam Gase. They hired a guy who had some question marks, but to John's point, the experience for somebody else, maybe a second voice in the room, I think was needed this offseason. Maybe it's needed into the future with a new head coach. But for Kliff Kingsbury now, this is the biggest stretch of coaching that he's ever going to experience in his life until, potentially the next job.
Yeah, I mean, he has to be just dialed into the details, every last detail. He can't miss. He can't have this team continue to have problems getting the play call in, the play clock dwindling, and them having to waste timeouts. Like, he has to be perfect with his challenges, with his play calling, with his scheming, his game planning. It's all got to be there for these next 3 games, against divisional opponents. You've got the Seahawks, who are in first place on Sunday, and then you've got a game against the Rams, and then you've got the Monday night game against the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, it's all right there for you, and for you to kind of change the narrative. But, I think as far as what you're going to see on display starting next week on HBO Hard Knocks is that this guy is a very likable guy. It's going to continue to echo what John said in the comments. But at the same time, is it what this team needs, right? I mean, I'm sure the players like it. I think that he's a player's coach to a fault. And when things are spiraling out of control, sometimes a player's coach is not what you need. You need more of an authoritative guy. You need somebody that's going to kick you in the ass and send you in the right direction and tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And, I think you're going to see that on full display once the Hard Knock season begins. It reminds me a little bit of what the Suns used to deal with Jeff Hornacek as their head coach. He had a little bit of success his first season, and then he had a little bit of talent on his roster, and he was a player's coach to a fault, and he kind of just lost the respect to the locker room by the end of his tenure. And once things went south, especially from a player's coach perspective, things can go really south really quickly because if you don't command that respect at some point, you're going to lose it immediately. So Arizona Cardinals and Kliff Kingsbury, they need this win to kind of hold that off for a little bit longer.
Well, we're here in November, early November. Tyler brings up a good point in the chat, and we had a chance to address comment like this after they lost to Seattle before the New Orleans game. Kliff Kingsbury loses Sunday. I think you and I are in agreement. He's not going to get fired. He's not going to get fired after Sunday. They're going to let him coach out at least, I would assume, the remainder of the season. And there's no guarantee he'd be let go in January. And we're not rooting for people to get fired, but we're trying to put you in the mindset of Michael Bidwill. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God.
So the fire, that is not a PHNX shirt, by the way. That is not something you can get from the locker. No. That is a fire #FireCliff t-shirt.
Where is that from?
That looks like our friends at Bird Gang Travel put that together. But Bo, let me pose this to you. What would it take for the Cardinals to move off Kliff during the regular season? Is that even something that is feasible at this point?
Yeah, absolutely.
You think so he could get fired during the year?
I mean, it would have to be late in the year. It would be a couple more losses.
What's the point of that?
3 games.
You think if they lost 3 in a row to 3 straight division opponents, if they lose this week, they won't be favored in Mexico City and they won't be favored at LA. So that becomes increasingly likely. You think if he goes 0-3 and they're 3-9, he gets fired during the year?
I mean, I think there's a distinct possibility of that. I mean, you just locked up your franchise quarterback through 2027 to $230.5 million. If he's not the guy and the stretch shows you that, what's the point of waiting? I mean, you have to start to figure out who you want to keep as far as the staff goes going forward. Is there anybody internally that you want to give the opportunity? Looking at the defensive play caller, is that something you could work with going forward? And then also roster wise, you have to figure out who wants to be here and who wants to fight for their job. I think that absolutely. I mean, as far as the NFL, we know what this organization's about. We know that Michael Bidwill doesn't like to make knee-jerk reactions.
No,
but as far as
true.
As far as, can you back him into a corner? I think that nobody in the NFL is adverse to that. I don't think anybody can really truly fight it. If they hit bottom out below what anybody ever imagined in the 2022 season, if they're stuck on 3 wins in 3 weeks, I think that it's going to force their hand. It's going to force them into a very uncomfortable conversation. We've made this point before. We don't know what the numbers were on his contract extension, but they are so pale in comparison to what you just gave Kyler Murray, and that's the important thing going forward.
We think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million remaining. If he averages out $5 to $6 million per season, which is a bump from his first contract, it's somewhere in the $30 million range that they'd have to cut a check for it. Now, they could span it out. They just got done, coincidentally, Bo, coming into this year, paying off Steve Wilkes. So you finally freed up some cash. Who knows? Again, we're not rooting for people to be fired on this show. We want Kliff to do well. We like Kliff Kingsbury, but we are in agreement that this is a must win. And I think I put together something. This is not anything fancy, and hopefully that we can get a graphic made here if it comes to it. But now I think officially Sean Payton watch potentially being on here after this weekend if they lose. I'm going to say we're on pre-watch right now. But if they lose to the Seahawks on Sunday at home, you can sign me up. The Payton watch is on. What do we need to do? Get people on the phone. Sorry, Kliff. Give me my Super Bowl champion head coach.
I feel like we're on a 24/7 news channel, and they're like, this is severe inclement.
That's the only thing that matters. Then I don't care about any transactions or anything else. That's the only thing I care about.
What are you right now willing to give up for Sean Payton?
First round pick. I would go to New Orleans.
I mean, if they have as bad of a season to fire Kliff, that's going to be a pretty damn good pick.
Sean Payton with Kyler Murray, the rest of the roster takes care of itself. Remember, Sean Payton was suspended. They lost draft picks because, the hit job on Kurt Warner and a bunch of other guys, and they still went to NFC championship games. And I think the Cardinals, by the way, have a playoff-worthy roster. Do they have holes? Yes, we're going to talk about it. But we're also going to play a game in our third segment. The Cardinals have a superior roster to Seattle, and I don't think it's particularly close. Do they have the right man in charge? So if it's us and the Chargers, and we're trying to do a deal, right? And the New Orleans Saints come to the Cardinals and say, you got to up the ante. The Chargers picks in the 20s or in the late teens. Mm-hmm. Shit, here you go. Here's the 9th overall pick. Give me Sean Payton for the next 10 to 15 years. I as much as I would love, I think he'll coach for 10 or 15 more years. Don't you?
He
looks good.
No, I don't think.
No,
I mean, I think it'd be like a BA, 2013, like probably like a 5-year.
Hang on. You see him on that Netflix movie? He looks good. He is. Sean Payton's
that's offensive. He looks better than Kevin James.
Sean Payton's 58. BA when he took the job was 60. So, but BA coached in Tampa, so we've added some years. I think you get Sean Payton for 10 years. 10 years of Sean Payton with Kyler Murray. Stop! Don't do that. I'm trying to get excited. He's 58. He's in LA.
He's gold. Sexy like BA. No, I mean there's a lot of wear and tear.
58 in Arizona is like 45.
Remember too, like I know what the finished product was with him in New Orleans, right? And they were a wagon for a while, and you could kind of pencil them in for 12 to 13 wins, but there was some mediocrity mixed in there between. I mean, there was some 7 and 9.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's going to take a little bit for Kyler, I think, to really get the grasp of his system. It's not exactly Drew Brees picking things up from day one. I mean,
these are all these. You know what these sound like? First world motherfucking problems.
You're wanting to give up, a teens pick for a coach.
I'm sorry. I've seen what first round picks do with this team. I've seen this team succeed without first round picks. If I get Sean Payton back, F these picks. What's more important to F these picks than to get a Super Bowl head coach? You have the quarterback, and I think the roster is in really good shape after this year. This is a conversation for a different day. I don't want to get off topic. Look who
juicy,
they've developed. They've got really good. It's the old players that are not succeeding for the Cardinals. Pugh and Rodney Hudson, right, and James Conner. It's the old players they gave money to that are unfortunately not holding up. The young players, you can make an argument, are lifting this team up outside of the Watts of the world. I would feel really good if I'm a Cardinal fan. I'm Sean Payton. Like, I don't need that pick because I've supplemented this roster. I think that's the biggest reason people are on Kliff right now. The talent is there to win. They just aren't winning. Now, how does Keim factor into that? Would he get fired? Would you give Payton probably a little bit of personnel say, especially on the offensive side? You'd be foolish not to if you're Michael Bidwill. But I feel like, to your point, and I'm not rooting for losses. I want Kliff to win this weekend. I want to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
But if you start to lose, maybe to your point, maybe you do let go of Kliff early, and then you just start the recruiting process of, hey, Sean, how are you? Can we go out to dinner?
The biggest issue is, because you mentioned the first round picks. If you had a choice and you could rid yourself of one problem, is it Kliff or Keim?
So one or the other? I can't have both? Because I think both of them.
You could make the case that Keim cost this team at least one game this year with his negligent decision to ride with Matt Amendola.
Kliff has just looked. Maybe last year I would have gone with.
Muff
Steve.
That punt for Dortch.
Kliff just looks so unprepared, Bo. Like, at least I've seen Steve
put
together playoff rosters, and Keim is not perfect. But Kliff just right now it feels like you're going like I don't like guns, but it feels like you're going into a gunfight with a little dull pocket knife right now with him starting games. I'm not a gun guy, but
you also sound like you're making up for a significant. You're trying to make excuses for a significant other that you just shouldn't be with any longer. You
cannot let Steve Keim hire a fourth coach.
It's like he's great grilling. That's why I'm still with him.
That's not a fair question. I don't like that question. Don't put me in that position. It made me uncomfortable. But in all seriousness, if Kliff gets fired, Michael, what are you doing if you're not firing Steve Keim? Like it's time to reset. Promote Adrian Wilson
at this point, right?
Yeah. Until it happens, it's been with the organization since what, 99, 2000? Yeah.
I didn't come to this Wednesday show looking to have this serious conversation about
shit's serious right now. Let's get serious. You
threw me off with the goddamn Sean Payton tracker at the bottom.
It's great though. It's great. We're going to get some fancy graphics for that here pretty soon if the Cardinals lose. But I can tell you right now, everybody needs to check out Underdog Fantasy ahead of this weekend. Make yourself some cash. Promo code PHNX Underdog Fantasy. Get this: if you're a new customer, you sign up. Underdog's going to double your first deposit up to $100. I lost all my money on Underdog. I continue to persevere, and I'm now making money because I'm putting everything I have on DeAndre Hopkins overs every week. Because good hell, this offense is basically K1 playing backyard sandlot football with Hopkins. You can gamble, search in the App Store, click on the link in the show notes, sign up with promo code PHNX. Underdog, again, it's going to double your first deposit up to $100. Help us out. Help Underdog Fantasy out. Help yourself out. Underdog, promo code PHNX. Do it now.
Underdog just loves making us money on this show because we continue to hammer DeAndre Hopkins hires as far as his receptions and his receiving yards. His first game back was 5.5. We said hammer it, especially, and then also like the 54.5 receiving yards. We said hammer it. He doubled those pretty much. And then the next game was 7.5 and it was 74.5. Said hammer it. And what does he do? He doubles it pretty much. Just an absolute wagon as far as Underdog Fantasy. He's just making you buku bucks. You got to appreciate that. You also have to appreciate a great watch party. And we've got that going on at Four Peaks. We're hosting all the U.S. and Mexico World Cup matches at their 8th Street Pub in Tempe, the OG location. You got to check it out. We got beer specials, giveaways, guest appearances, and more. Check the link in the show notes. Yeah, just right below us here as we broadcast live on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, you can check out the show notes there as well. Register for free. Get your spot now because they're going to fill up. People are going to want to go watch this U.S. Men's team go at it in the World Cup. Got to be 21 years or older. Got to enjoy that Four Peaks beer and drink it responsibly.
Anna's in the chat saying Hopkins 200 yards. Listen, he's on a tear right now. He's on a 1,400-yard tear, even with missing the first 6 games of the season. And if you're Kliff Kingsbury and you're go down swinging with D-Hop. So, and Seattle secondary, not great. So I would think Hopkins has another monster game. Bo, you were at practice.
That matchup, dude. I can't wait to see D-Hop, Tariq Wooten. That's what I'm here for. Just week 9. And, the big young kid is at a UTEP. 4 interceptions already. He's DeAndre Hopkins told us today in the locker room that he thinks he's one of the best young corners in the game. So a lot of, I'm sure, mutual respect I would be surprised if Tariq Wooten had anything negative to say about DeAndre Hopkins, but I can't wait. Get the popcorn out. He won't hopefully hide from DeAndre Hopkins like
Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he's a little bit more well-equipped as far as his youth, his athleticism, and his ball skills that, are long gone for Patrick Peterson, who, by the way, guaranteed 2 picks. He got 0. He had one like pass defense against AJ Green. But yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable what he's done to this offense. 27 points per game already for this offense that was averaging 17. That's a difference of 10 points per game. Yards per game, they're up 100 yards per game in this short sample size with DeAndre Hopkins back in there, 437 to 337, and 25 first downs to 20 first downs per game. So they're just operating at a much higher level with DeAndre Hopkins.
Girthquake, good question in the chat. I want to address this. Is he really on the hot seat though? Meaning Kliff. I don't see Michael cheap Bidwill eating $30 million. Then he won't have enough money to fill up his private jet and his helicopter. And he says that tongue in cheek, and his dad Bill was often referred to as cheap. I don't think Michael is cheap. And I also would say this to Bo's point. It's like, I'm probably going to butcher this analogy, but if you've got a home that you paid a premium for, but then you also have, I don't know, like an air conditioner that's kind of going in and out here in the desert, like you're gonna cut the cord on the air conditioner to make your home more livable and salvageable. And that's what it is. It's like you're cutting the cord on Kliff, which is a significantly lesser investment than Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray, go look overthecap.com. Look what Kyler Murray is going to be making in 2 years, in 3 years, guaranteed money. You can't waste Kliff Kingsbury on Kyler Murray if it's not working. And again, that's not to say Kliff didn't help him get to this point, and Kliff didn't help Kyler's development and make him into a 2-time Pro Bowler and the Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I mean, goodness, they make so much effing money, guys. It's not our money. The team's hosting a Super Bowl this year. You know how much revenue is going to be coming into the Valley, thankfully, in Glendale. Like, you can cut Kliff Kingsbury a check over the course of the next couple of years for $30 million. That is a mid-level free agent signing that's a bust. Kliff will be fine. Michael will be fine. Fred with the super chat. Thank you, Cardinal Fred 76. Do you think it's K2 or K1's fault that they keep wasting timeouts with the play clock? That's coaching, in my opinion. Now, Kyler could have something to do with that, but most of the time, Kyler looks frustrated and he looks to the sideline. So, Bo, I will defer, as Jean-Paul Edwards says. Kliff calls the plays. Kyler, wants to know the play call.
So this has been a hot topic, a question that's been asked at the last 2 media availabilities for Kliff Kingsbury, and then today we talked to Kyler Murray. So we've talked to both parties here. And Kyler, we saw, this team start against New Orleans on Thursday Night Football, started to deploy huddling, which this team we're used to seeing run the no huddle. And then we saw against Minnesota, because of being on the road in a loud environment, he had the wristband. So there's 2 adjustments that they made right there. And Kliff said, they were going to get back to the basics starting today. They had to close walkthrough, and says that it's something that they're handling. But when asked as far as the question of who's to blame, and I'm not saying that Kyler threw his coach under the bus, but when asked from Josh Weinfuss of ESPN.com today, especially in the 2-minute situation, what happened, what went wrong, against the Minnesota Vikings, Kyler Murray didn't say it, but he basically pleaded the fifth. So make of that what you will. I mean, what does it say to you, John?
We saw the blow up against New Orleans. That as much as the team is trying to write that off as just emotion, and it was, and that happens in football, and it does, that is not normal behavior for a head coach and a quarterback. And I think Kyler, I don't know this for certain, Bo, I think he's lost a little bit of respect for Kliff, and he hears the outside noise, and he knows that Kyler's caught up now. He's seen 3 years of NFL film, and he's been, for the most part, healthy, and he's played in all these games. And it's like, we need to take our game up. How many times has Kyler said that? Like, hey, guys, we need to be more prepared. That's an indictment on his head coach. He's talked about it in the past. He talked about it last year. He talked about it in the offseason. Losing is not acceptable to Kyler Murray. And if you're a Kyler Murray hater and you don't like him because he's smaller and he's an introvert, he wants to win. And I think right now there is some uncertainty in the locker room, and specifically from his quarterback, that Kliff Kingsbury. I mean, how could you, if you're Kyler Murray and you feel like I'm a top 5 quarterback and I'm the best quarterback in the NFC West, but my head coach has to go up against Pete Carroll and Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, 2 of which have titles, all 3 have been to Super Bowls. Like, how do you not think, well, I'm at a disadvantage because Kliff's my head coach? You of course think that.
Yeah. And if you're the players in that locker room, you're the 22 guys or the 11 guys on the starting offense or defense, you have to feel like, all right, we have to be perfect, right? We have to play perfect brand of football. And that's, at the NFL level, if you play tight, you're going to likely get your ass beat. So, you got to think about the leaders in that locker room, including Kyler. And we know how he feels about losing. He hates it. And Isaiah Simmons told us outright on Monday, he hates losing more than he likes winning. And we know we got to think that J.J. Watt is of the same mindset. DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, he's not even celebrating his hot start to his season so far through 2 games because the team's 1-1. So the players, I mean, they want to get this thing right. Are they going to be led in the right direction, though, and given the tools necessary to scheme against a Seattle team that's going to be prepared to face them on Sunday at State Farm Stadium? We know what McVay is going to bring to the table, despite what Los Angeles and their struggles how they've been experiencing those the last couple of weeks, and then San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan and kind of a little bit extra juice with the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey. So it's, I mean, to your point, I mean, how are the players going to respond? Are they going to get put in the right position really for the first time all season?
And I'll disagree with Adam H here in the chat. If you're a top quarterback, you don't lose to Geno Smith no matter how bad the coaching was. I watched Deshaun Watson with Bill O'Brien a couple of years ago, and Deshaun off the field's a completely different story. They won like 4 games for that one Houston team, and that's when he asked for a trade. And Deshaun Watson, much more accomplished at the NFL level than Kyler Murray. Like, franchise quarterbacks, you can only do so much. Now, I think Kyler can play better, but when your head coach is your play caller and the offensive, genius schematic magician, and you guys look inept every game, and you haven't scored a first quarter touchdown, that's on Kliff Kingsbury. Now, again, I'm not making excuses for Kyler. Kyler needs to play better, but it starts with a head coach, guys. Like, it's a coaching league. We'll get to one of these other comments here. Where was that question from earlier? What do you guys think, according to Anish? Fire Keim and Kliff now. Let's start fresh. Is Bidwill really thinking about that? Does Bidwill really want to win? Bo, I'll pose that to you.
Yeah, I think that Michael Bidwill, I don't think you should even question it at this point. Ever since he took over the reins, back when this team really transitioned from Sun Devil Stadium to UFP and now State Farm Stadium, and they became, a legit NFL franchise after so many years of futility and even below mediocrity. I think that Michael Bidwill doesn't have to prove to anybody that where he truly wants this franchise to go. He wants it to take the next step. Now, does that mean that he doesn't fall for and maybe listen to the wrong people? I mean, you have to keep in mind that Michael Bidwill, everything he knows, even before he took over the reins as, the president of this franchise and now owner, everything he's learned about team building is from his GM. Steve Keim has been in this organization for over 20 plus years. He's been this GM since 2013. He's been right there by the side of Michael Bidwill. So if he finally ever, cuts the cord on that, that's going to be one of the biggest decisions of his tenure as Arizona Cardinals owner. I just think that they're not going to let this team just kind of waffle. I mean, he was a guy that Steve Keim said would call him in the wee hours of the morning as they discuss Kyler Murray's contract extension. I mean, this is something that he wants to get right. Now, is it JoJo the circus boy from Tommy Boy, where you just play with it too much and you kill your little pet there? I mean, it's possible, right? But he wants to get it right, but does he get in his own way? I think that all of us have that, we have that downfall.
You can't be a last place team with a $45 million quarterback and expect to be taken seriously. I'm sorry, in a division with Jimmy G and Matthew Stafford, who looks like compromised and hurt, and the Rams even admit they're not the same team, and then whatever the hell's going on in Seattle. Like, if you would have told me, I didn't know the Cardinals record, but everything else in the NFC, here were the top teams, and here's who's regressing. I'm like, perfect year for the Cardinals to slide on into the playoffs, win 10 games. And, that's not what's happening now. What is happening, Bo was at practice today. Limited walkthrough practice, Bo, that you were not privy to, but you did get a chance to chat with Kliff. And we got a bunch of updates as it relates to Sunday, and a bunch of guys looking like they're not going to play.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surprising. We saw Darrell Williams find his way onto the injury report after playing 24 snaps on Sunday. He was pretty much the backup to Benjamin, and now he's found his way to the IR. That it's a hip issue to go along with the knee issue that he worked his way back from. So the veteran replacement for Chase Edmonds, it looks like his time as an Arizona Cardinal probably done, right? Yeah. And then you've got you've got Rodney Hudson, who Kliff already ruled out earlier this week, and then DJ Humphries is now a game time decision. But Kliff talked about how encouraged he was from Josh Jones. So I don't think Josh Jones is you have to be encouraged where he is and the tackle spot is. It's still the interior of that offensive line going up against the Seattle team that gave you fits, at that spot 2 weeks ago. That's still something like where Billy Price is going to get his third straight start. Which one's going to show up? New Orleans Saints Billy Price or Minnesota Vikings Billy Price? Where Darius Smith was a turnstile to Darius Smith twice. That's the one thing you should be concerned about. I think as far as the bookends, at least at left tackle, you're going to get a guy like Josh Jones where you can rely upon him. I like it. Soul Pancakes. Yeah. Keontae, I like to see him get more reps with Daryl Williams potentially being back out. And then, we're still day to day with James Conner. James Conner, he was limited in the walkthrough. He continues to be a limited participant, last couple weeks. So that doesn't really shed any light on what his availability is come Sunday.
Brian Abdallah, our buddy in the chat, saying Rodney has retired. And listen, this is the risk you had. You courted him back. He didn't come to anything this offseason. You didn't hedge your bet. Cody Ford, admirably, he's toughing it out. But he was meant to be a reserve backup spot start here and there. And now he's playing for Justin Pugh, who's a Pro Bowl level guard. He's out. And then, of course, no one wants Billy Price to be their starting center. That's why he wasn't signed over the course of the offseason, right?
Right.
Now, what I will say is he didn't play against Seahawks. That was Sean Harlow. Let's see what he can do. But there is some concern. I was thinking about it, Bo. Like, did the Vikings see something on tape after the Saints game that we can expose with Billy Price? They need to get that tightened up. I don't know. I have a hard time believing Sean Kugler puts together back-to-back bad offensive line performances, but we'll see. I also, Soul Pancakes, Keontae Ingram to me looked more explosive than Darrell Williams last week. Darrell Williams still looked semi-compromised. It's a young man's league at running back. Play the kids. And James Conner, listen, the Cardinals gave him a bunch of money too. Like, at the very least, I need to see you in short yardage this week. I need to see you along the goal line, helping this team out and converting critical fourth downs. Brother Numsy, I hope gets that number one spot once Conner comes back. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I would imagine that James's contract is going to need to be looked at in the offseason. They've got a bunch of big decisions this offseason. Hudson is still under contract, but I don't think they want to go through this again. Justin Pugh's going to be gone. They're going to have to remake their interior. But for this weekend, it's going to be kind of a hodgepodge again. Bo, let me ask you about this. So the Cardinals did make a move. They made a move yesterday. They acquired a linebacker. But today, they claimed defensive tackle, former second-round pick from the Cowboys, Tristan Hill, off of waivers. And, I put out some feelers with Cowboy people in the media there, and they have said that he can be explosive at times, but he can also be hit or miss, doesn't, particularly keep to gap assignment sometimes. So it looks like this is a necessary move because of Rashad Lawrence being out. But this is my opinion. Right now, Lecky Fotu is a big liability, and they need to try something else.
Yeah, I mean, they just need to find a rotation that they can maybe hit on a couple plays, right? And that's what Joseph's defense is kind of it's built on, is creating some negative plays. And if a guy like him can kind of get in and be disruptive and hit, and you're gonna have to take the good with the bad. I mean, that's where you are. That's how you've built your roster. And it's unfortunate that the guy that was having such a strong start to the season has now faced 2 injuries and is now facing his second surgery of the season in Rashard Lawrence. I mean, that's just unfortunately the ugly side of the game. So for them, I know that your prayers were answered in a wrong way, that you wanted a defensive tackle from the NFC East that you dropped to your knees every night for the last couple of weeks, and it just was the wrong one. It wasn't Daron Payne, because the Commanders have now won 3 in a row, and their prayers,
man.
Yeah, their prayers continue to be answered that their owner's finally going to sell. So it's unfortunate. They got a little bit more power of prayer than you do, Johnny. I don't know what's going on. You just got to live right going forward. But yeah, that is what it is. You just hope for this rotation to be better than what you've gotten out of a full-time performance from Lecky Fotu playing in place of Rashard Lawrence.
Yeah, to me, I look back on. I tried to watch some of the defensive snaps, especially in the second half against Minnesota, and it's just big number 95, just getting washed left and right. He's a backup player. Like he's a backup player. That's fine. Rashad Lawrence had taken that job. He was playing well. They got injuries. They need somebody else. We'll see what he can do. Last point on practice today, Bo Brock. So you talked about it with DJ Humphries. He's dicey to play. We'll see about James Conner. What do you make of the situation at linebacker now? We talked a little bit on our audio only podcast. Mm-hmm. They claimed a linebacker from Houston. No one knows who he is. But what kind of role is he going to have? And does it mean less snaps for Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins?
I mean, we know how this coaching staff is and how you have to earn their trust in order to kind of find your way onto the playing field. We even talked about it on the audio only podcast that they were more inclined to do it early in the tenure of Kliff Kingsbury and Vance Joseph. But you have to keep in mind Kenyon Drake, David Johnson, and I forget who their backup running back was at the time, were both hurt. Chase Edmonds and David Johnson were both hurt. So they were in need of a running back, and they just threw Kenyon Drake kind of to the flames there on Thursday Night Football, and he had that breakout performance. So that's like the rare occasion. As far as what you'd get from a guy like Kamu Grugier-Hill, Kliff said that was just somebody that they had their eye on. He was on their radar, that they think they can come in and play decent football for them. So, I mean, he'd have to kind of pivot from the way he ended his Texans tenure to where this last place team, Hill went to them and said, hey, I don't want to be here any longer. And they didn't try to find a trade partner. They just simply released him. So, take that with what you want. I don't think, especially in the immediate future, is any danger. I know that we've been snake bitten before to taking guys like Simmons and Zaven Collins off the field.
Yeah, to me, it's like, hey, one last place team to another, at least right now in the Cardinals. And why is he coming here? What snaps are going to be made available to him remains to be seen. And how it affects Sunday's matchup, we'll wait and see. And you can bet on Sunday's matchup right now using the DraftKings Sportsbook app. By the way, new customers can make any bet, a $5 NBA moneyline bet, and get $200 if your team wins. Suns are winning a lot. You love to see that. You also love to see your winnings boosted up to 100% using the DraftKings Step Up Same Game parlays. Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm using the same game parlay. I'm boosting it. I'm winning funds on DraftKings. It's simple. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You use promo code PHNX. That's promo code PHNX on DraftKings. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Do you see how swanky this set is? Don't you love how this set looks? You see how comfortable and good looking this chair is? It's all compliments.
You think you're better than me? Is that what you're saying?
What's up? Yeah, a little bit. It's more of a compliment here and then a shot at you. But as far as more furniture, hook this up. Also, I got to tell personal story. Like my wife, ever since we moved back to Arizona, she's been like redecorating the entire house. And finally, like I slid my laptop over after go to morefurniture.com. And I feel like I actually contributed something that I'm usually kind of shown the sidelines for. I'm Isaiah Simmons early in the season. I'm getting little snap counts here as far as contributions to the furniture in our house, but she actually is like, oh, I love this. And it's their fall sale right now. So you can get $100 gift card for every $1,000 you spend. Check them out. Morefurniture.com. That's morefurniture.com. Start to pimp out your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen, whatever you need furniture for. Check out More Furniture.
A reminder, please smash the like button on this video. Help share it around the old YouTube algorithm here. So we're going to play a little game. 10 best players in this game on Sunday between the Cardinals and the Seahawks. I have composed a list. Listen, Cardinals are a more talented team than the Seahawks, but how much more talented? I think it'd be interesting to go through it back and forth. You guys put your own list in the chat. The top 10 players in this game, here's what I came up with. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins are the top 2 players in this game. I don't think you can question that. And then I think it's DK Metcalf at number 3. Bo, Budda Baker, and Tyler Lockett round out the top 5. So you have a problem with my top 5 Cards Seahawks players in this game?
Yeah, I think that there are some pretty glaring omissions right now, just how the 2022 season has gone. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, as far as the careers of a guy like Budda Baker, he did show up on the injury report today, dealing with an ankle. Hopefully that's not something that lingers and is a true threat to him missing this game. But and Tyler Lockett, he's played well. I just think that he's taken maybe a couple steps back. I might like to see a couple of the younger Seahawks that have emerged this season, but sure. See this James Henderson in the super chat. So glad that with PHNX. Nice, appreciate you, James. Thanks for finding me over at my new place, PHNX Sports, PHNX Cardinals. We're loving it over here, building a great sports community at PHNX. Thanks for finding us. But yeah, let's keep it going.
All right, so there's my top 5. My bottom 5 and the rest of it, Jalen Thompson at number 6, Kenneth Walker the third at number 7. I put J.J. Watt at number 8, Byron Murphy at number 9, and Tariq Woolen, the rookie, at 10. So those are my top 10 players. Yeah. And again, the ranking, I think, is interchangeable. But the point I wanted to make is Cardinals, I think, have a firm 6. You could make an argument for 7 if you wanted to include Zach Allen. And then the Seahawks, it really starts and ends with, it's DK Metcalf, right? I think Tyler Lockett is still a top player in this game. I'm going to include then the 2 rookies, Kenneth Walker and Tariq Woolen. But that's it. Go look at the Seahawks depth chart defensively and pick out 5 names that you recognize. Now, you've got some players, as Bo pointed out, playing well, maybe playing above their head. And I'm certainly, as much as Geno Smith's doing well this year, I'm not putting him in the top 10. Wow. I think just 3 to 4 guys max for the Seahawks, which underscores the fact that the Cardinals cannot lose this game Sunday.
You were one of those guys that didn't write back, right? Or you wrote him off, right? And he didn't write back. Was that the saying from Geno after
Geno,
week 1?
I've watched your sorry ass NFL career for 7 years. You got punched by a teammate with the Jets. You're not a great football player. You're playing great football right now, but this is not sustainable. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's not.
I'd say that I think Jordan Brooks deserves a spot on this list.
That's fine.
I think but I like Walker up the list. I like Woolen up the list. He's been unbelievable this season. I think DeAndre Hopkins is the best player of all the players. I think he's proven that what he does to Kyler Murray's game. I think he's number 1, and then you can put Kyler at number 2. But other than that, I think your list is great. I'm seeing that you asked for my list, and I just kept it blank. I apologize.
Both busy working. That's fine. You know what? Here's the thing. It's interchangeable. Bo's list was probably going to be pretty comparable. Like the names are what matters, not so much the rankings.
How do you rank the coaches and the coordinators here?
Not great. I don't want to rank those. And it makes me want to do this again. Sean Payton watch here on the ticker.
There it is.
I would rank Kliff Kingsbury, get this, behind Pete Carroll as a head coach. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Pete Carroll's press conference today. You've seen all the press conference coming out of Renton/Seattle, the Seattle area. They're saying all the right things about team first. They're throwing their shade against their former quarterback who's playing poorly, and Russell Wilson. Like, everything is coming up Seahawks right now. It's really crazy. The Arizona Cardinals. We like I said, opportunity. You're going to hear that word ad nauseum this week. What they have in front of them, and the potential to just completely crush their momentum come Sunday. They have that chance. Can they do it? That's the biggest storyline going into this.
Anish in the chat, or Anish, I'm sorry. Johnny is a hater. Where's the Genomania? I am a hater. I hate the Seahawks. You're damn right. I hate the Seahawks. Yeah. Why Pete Derrick in the chat? Sounds like typical Cardinal fans, sore losers. Hey, man, we root for our team here. And I think the Seahawks are full of shit, and I don't think they're any good. And I think that the Cardinals beat them in Seattle with D-Hop and Matt Prater, who both, by the way, are going to play this weekend. But to Elwan's point, they have the culture unequivocally, and they have the coaching. And that's something, as much as we want to harp on the Cardinal roster and look at all these playmakers at receiver, you got to have those two things, right, Bo? And I think that is what's missing right now.
Wouldn't it be just great to really just send Seattle home with an L, just completely crush their hopes? Yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll and his insufferable gum chewing, him just stop on a dime chewing his gum because Kliff Kingsbury and this Arizona Cardinals team finally got it right. And since the return of DeAndre Hopkins, they moved to 2-1, and they moved their record to 4-5, and then dropped the Seahawks to 5-4. I mean, it would be a huge win that they could build off. But as I said, they've got to figure it out between now and Sunday, and they've got to scheme it up because Pete Carroll is going to be ready. He was ready for him in Seattle. He's going to be ready for him again in Glendale. He always shows up for these games, so it's just going to be big for him. It's a big division showdown.
Poor little liquid death right there, Bo, out for our buddy Rodrigo, who did get cut today. But he came into his job. He's a lunch pail mentality. He's peak male form with his glasses, kicking field goals against the Saints. Did a nice job. Cardinals are 1 for 1. He should have been the Cardinal kicker well before that. But it's unfortunate. But we're back. Here's what we're doing. We're going to talk to you about the PHNX merchandise locker. You can cop some gear right now. I'm supporting the Coyotes, who are having a nice start to the season. Bo's got the classic black on white t-shirt. I've got the hat. Check it out right now. Become a member at gophnx.com for just under $60 for the year. You can subscribe using the promo code Howard, our buddy Howard Balzer. We love Howie. He's got tremendous content every day for you. If you're thinking to yourself, I need a place where I can get just that premium Cardinal insight outside of this podcast, which is your premier Cardinal podcast, check out Howard's content at gophnx.com. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah, there's a lot of people disappointed in the performance of this team, but Howard really kind of breaks it down from an offensive line standpoint, and something that we talked about all off season long about the continuity with this offensive line. You're returning Hudson, you're returning Justin Pugh, DJ Humphries, Calvin Beachum. The only new member was Will Hernandez. And Howard breaks it down how many different offensive line combinations they've had and how kind of disruptive it's been to this offense finding any type of rhythm. So you can be mad at Kliff, you can be mad at Kyler, but also you have to keep in mind that they haven't exactly had the most healthy offensive line. Howard breaks it down. Go phnx.com. Also some other great articles up there from Howard.
Mike in the chat, is anyone else dreading Hard Knocks? No, because it's either going to be a great tire fire that you can't look away, or it's going to give context to what we all think of Kyler Murray and how, he is not publicly perceived in the best light. And this could do a lot to take away from those negative aspects. And I think Kliff Kingsbury is going to come off well on Hard Knocks, but will he live to see another day after Hard Knocks, Bo, is the real question.
Yeah, let me tell you a little insight I got today about Hard Knocks was according to Kliff Kingsbury, the camera is very uninvasive, hasn't bothered the team at all. HBO and NFL Films is kind of keeping their distance. But also, Kyler Murray said he was mic'd up today. He says the cameras really haven't been following him around. There's no in-depth, off the field Kyler Murray stuff that's been filmed yet. So if you're looking for at least next week, some insight into who Kyler Murray is, you're not getting it. Also, let me follow that up with some exciting news. I saw Marquise Hollywood Brown walking around in just some normal Nike shoes today, looking good and some good kicks. There's no walking boot. Looked like he was moving around fine. Be interesting to see, how close he can get once he comes off IR, once those 4 weeks are up.
It's interesting. I heard pre-draft that Sean Payton was a huge Hollywood Brown fan. All right. I've played out this graphic. We're going to get a different one for a different day.
No, I love it. It's simple.
It is. It's effective. Hopefully this podcast
is at halftime on Sunday.
I don't want to put that on our halftime show.
No TD in the first quarter after another poor offensive performance in the first half of football. It's fine. Yeah, let's keep it locked and loaded.
This is free Cardinal therapy out there because we're at a tipping point for this season. Either we're going to get a team that we can root for the rest of the season to make the playoffs, and they're going to be feisty if they win this game, or we're going to have some tough conversations. But you have those conversations here. Don't go anywhere else. This is the best, most premium Arizona Cardinal podcast, full free, every single chance we get here on the YouTube. Subscribe to the PHNX Cardinals podcast wherever you get your podcast. We love all of you. We appreciate the endless support. We're coming off. The Cardinals didn't have their best month, but we just had our best month in October, and that's because of all of you. Like and subscribe. For Bo Brack, I'm Johnny Venerable. We're back on Friday, live show, audio only tomorrow. Have a good one, everybody.